All right, I'm recording this. It is November 10th, 2023. Um, let's see. Today's topic is causality, I guess would be the best word for it. Um, okay, there are a couple reasons I'm recording this. Number one, I want to get better at explaining how I'm thinking verbally, right? Which I think I do fine, but it's nowhere near the level. Oh, there's a dog. What I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by Pepe, the Bichon, was it's my verbal ability to explain my thoughts. Um, oh, you gotta be kidding me, dude! This is just gonna be touch and go. It happened again. And this mic is also terrible. Oh, don't start! Don't you dare start! Okay. But I feel like this will be a useful way to get more practice in explaining how I'm thinking off the cuff. None of this is scripted. I might script something later. Dog's barking again. But yeah, I just wanted to explore this general idea of causality, how things interact or follow one another, and create, like a timeline of events. Because everyone has a timeline of, you know, their life in their head, of the events. They think they have a good understanding of where they've been, how things transpired, and how that led. But what I found basically just now, and what kind of made me want to start recording, is if you really sit down really hard and think, you can find a lot of memories or information or data points in the past that you just haven't considered yet. So yeah, I just want to talk about that for a little bit. So where to begin? I was thinking about middle school and how I underwent, as many middle schoolers do, a complete personality shift. Right? Um, I was very socially oriented, I guess you could say, in middle school. To my own detriment. Like it was pretty obvious, that I don't thrive with that as my main focus. Um, but I did it anyways because I felt there was something of value to be found there. But I've always had interests ever since I was a kid. Video games, things I was exposed to. That's what I actually cared about, and I would forego all of that for the social environment that was gaining complexity as a middle schooler. Um, and gaining value, seemingly value to me at that age. I was like, oh, this is becoming something, I should participate in this. And to do so, I'll have to either mask or just ignore the parts of my life that I have in front of me right now that I'm concerned with. So I'm going to have to learn a new skill. And I did that for a while. That was the most I'd ever pretended in my life, right? To be someone that was socially acceptable. And I actually did a pretty good job at it. Even though I was arguably like the bottom 5% in terms of like athletic performance, I would still go on sport teams. And, I was absolutely terrible, but I was skilled enough at talking and being buddies with everybody that nobody really cared and had a good time. I mean, I wasn't having a good time actually doing it. I wasn't really enjoying myself, but I guess you could say climbed the social hierarchy of middle school, right? But something happened um, as middle school went on. It was about a 3-year period where I started to understand as time went on. It's like I'm getting less and less out of this. I've kind of figured this out. I've got all of these people that like me or I think have a positive impression of me, but I'm not really getting anything out of it. So what are we doing here? And without cognitive, like I just explained it like that. Um, there was no neuron. There were no neurons firing when that change happened. I wasn't actively thinking about it, but I was led in a way towards my actual interests, who what I actually feel like makes me up as a person. Because what else makes you a person? That's a topic for a different time. Um, but yeah, I started leaning in, and it was very subtle. As middle school came to a close, started leaning more and more into just the things I started to enjoy, that I have always enjoyed. Cartoons, video games, things like that. Things that I kept hidden from the majority of the crowd. I still had friends, I'd play video games with, but yeah, I just decided to go full ham on that because it made me the happiest as a kid. And because of that, because I kind of just slowly returned to a more authentic state of being, I also found myself making friends that, kind of reflected that. So people nowadays talk a lot about how hard it is to make friends, right? Oh man, I wish I was in school, man. Oh man, where are all the friends at? That kind of thing. Um, and they often talk about how easy it was to make friends when you were a kid. So here's an example of that. Um, there was this nerdy kid, that in previous years I had avoided because, oh, he's a nerd. Oh, you mean I'm not going to get anywhere. Obviously, if I'm reading this data I've received correctly, I'm not going to get anywhere by talking to this guy. But all of that had changed, and so I saw this nerdy kid sitting, with a couple guys at lunch, and without any deliberation, without any cost benefit analysis, I just sat down to next to him because I was interested. I said, "Oh man, I bet you I can talk to this guy about something that's interesting." I just did that one day. I sat down next to him, and he became, my best friend. Um, over the coming years, and that I don't want to say that having a true friend is impossible as a kid, but kids aren't as complex as adults, um, in a lot of ways, and I feel like that's true of friendships too, right? So he was the first complex, like true friend I felt like I had because I could go into these topics I really cared about, and at any length just talk about it, and he would be, he wasn't forcing himself to pay attention. He just responded in kind, and it was a beautiful playback. And so, yeah, I would consider that, a true friendship, right? Like the melding of two minds, without any pressure to do so. It just kind of happens. Um, so yeah, that kind of set me on the course. Middle school got out, summer break, and I was just kind of going down this rabbit hole of my interests. Oh man, I love gaming. I love cartoons. I used to watch. I still do actually. All of these internet animators. YouTube animators, Newgrounds guys, Oni, Psychic Pebbles. I was like 9 years old. It's like 2009, and I'm watching those guys, or 2010, 2011. Spaz Kid. I'm 11 years old watching Spaz Kid. That can tell you a lot right there. But yeah, I obsessed over these things, and high school came around, and I just felt way more content, way more happy. Obviously, there's turbulence at like 13, 14, in terms of there are a lot of things physiologically that are just changing about you. Um, but despite that, I was still, I was probably the happiest you could have possibly been. I like it's kind of ridiculous to say, but I was probably the happiest kid out of the entire grade. That's how I really feel about that. And it was just a unique happenstance, right? Of like going back to my interests, exploring the waters of another area, finding out it's not what I want, and then just returning to what I liked naturally. And having a stable structure to grow up in didn't hurt. And that's like, if that's one of your criteria for a happy childhood, that knocks out like for probably like 60-70% of kids, even back then, right? So yeah, no, I would say I was probably the happiest kid. I wasn't, I didn't have the best grades. I wasn't an overachiever or anything, but I was extremely happy. Yeah. And so during that time, and this is kind of where I wanted to get to. It took a long way to get there, but I guess that's part of this recording, huh? Just figuring out how you explain things. Um, I had gotten into a game called Skullgirls, right? And the way that happened, I just thought about this today. There's a channel, a chain of links um, that led to that, right? So I mentioned I was a fan of YouTube animators. There was this channel called Jaxamoto that I watched that promoted the game Skullgirls. And then I played Skullgirls and loved Skullgirls and was just I'd never seen I'd played dozens and dozens of video games at that time in my life, already. And I'd never played a game like that. I had looked at it, I'm like, how is it possible um, to draw images like this and have them be so beautiful and so detailed, and at the same time they're moving? And I thought the same about the illustrations in the story mode as well. They just captivated me. I'm like, the fact that this is available and that someone like used a writing implement to create an image like this is just it's blowing my mind. So I suddenly had an interest in drawing, right? Um, and I my interest in drawing came from like watching cartoons and being influenced by what the people creating those cartoons were interested in. Um, and through Skullgirls, I also learned about artists like Zone. I'm 13. I'm 13. I'm like, oh, who's this Zone guy? I start watching Zone ZTV News. It's like his little side project he has when he's not animating, certain content, right? Um, but yeah, I discovered Zone through Skullgirls because he animated for them, and at this point, that's the realm of my interests. And it just keeps expanding from there, right? All of these things they lead to just something else that has more depth, and I find super super interesting. So I would watch ZTV News, and there was this character called Dave who would play off of the character Zontan. But I'm like, this is so funny, and this character is written or this character is voiced by the same guy who writes the show. Who's this guy? Oh, his name's Bennett the Sage. Oh, that's really all right. Let's check this guy out. He has an entire. He was a part of the Channel Awesome crew. At least he used to be, right? Which is pretty funny. But I'm 13, and I've discovered this Channel Awesome guy called Ben the Sage, and he has a show called Anime Abandon. And I'm like, what is anime, dude? Like, what is anime abandoned? There are hundreds of videos on this site. This is insane. So I just start watching, and I'm watching this guy in a classic, that guy with the glasses, commentary fashion. That like they all have this way of writing scripts and developing like punchlines to jokes that hit 60% of the time. But it's like that, and I'm watching this, and like, there's this whole world of cartoons that I've just never come into contact with, or if I have, it hasn't grabbed me. Um, but I'm watching this guy, and he's like, ripping on how terrible all these shows are, but he talks about Cowboy Bebop, and so I remember watching 2 minutes of the review of Cowboy Bebop, and him just being completely different from all of his other reviews that had such a negative comedic stance. It's just grab your popcorn and laugh at how terrible this bargain bin anime from the 90s that got dubbed somehow. Let's just laugh at how terrible it is. But Cowboy Bebop was different. Like the tone was immediately different from the time that the review started. I can remember watching it, being like, "Oh wow, this is really weird." And so about 2 minutes in, 3 minutes into the review, I paused it and I said, "I don't want to watch a review for a show like this. This looks like it could be cool. I want to discover this for myself." So man, oh yeah, this takes me back, man. Like I just went into the YouTube search bar, right? I'm watching an anime review and I just type in Cowboy Bebop episodes. And right there, there's an entire channel dedicated and they did like a 4K Blu-ray rip. I don't even understand how it's possible to get that good of quality at that time. It was like 2013 or something. And I watched it on YouTube. I watched the whole thing. It was dubbed. And that was my first experience with an anime. Yeah. And you can imagine. I mean, it totally blew my mind, right? I'd never seen anything like it. Like I would just sit after finishing a couple episodes, and I had to go to bed and wake up for school in the morning. I would just sit on my bed and think about like how insane what I just watched is, and try and replay what I had just seen. And I fell in love with it. It was the first thing show that had like really really attached me, I guess you could say. And that I felt like I was exploring new ground, right? I'm like, this is weird. Cowboy Bebop, no one's ever heard of this. That's not true. You go into Hot Topic, there you can buy your Faye Valentine shirt or whatever. But it was a sense of adventure. It was, all of these events had just opened doors for me in realms of interest. And so, through high school, I'm just kind of deepening these things. Um, it was late freshman year where I decided, you know what, I've I've toyed with drawing after playing Skullgirls for like a year, right? Using my mom's tablet. I'm just like kind of tracing over drawings to see if some of that magic can rub off on me. But sometime it was late freshman year, it was second semester of freshman year. I'm like 14. No, yeah, I would have been 14. Um, and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna get serious about this because it's very hard. I've discovered it's very hard over the past year to draw anything that's cool. So I started buckling down, right? Um, and me and my friend, the one I had mentioned earlier, he had a comic idea that he had. It was called Jack Monroe. It was about it was Devil May Cry, okay? It was just Devil May Cry. This guy, I'm Jack Monroe. I use guns and a scythe and I kill demons. I didn't know anything about Devil May Cry, so I thought he was like, the greatest genius of all time. Like, you just think about stories like that. This is so awesome. So, I just partnered up with him and we were gonna illustrate this comic. Did a ton of concept art and stuff like that, and it, never amounted to anything. But one day, we were in the library just talking about it, and just this chick randomly overheard it, and that's how I made my second best friend was just drawing at a table and chumming it up with my best friend. And she came over, and just like my previous friend, sparks flew, and we're just getting along instantly. There was just a common cause that like ground us together. So this has like gone on for 18 and a half minutes at this point. Point is, causality is insane. And if you think about any instance in your life that means anything to you, or even ones that don't, which can be even more interesting sometimes because you're more likely to find something that you'd never even thought, right? Or you'd already forgotten. Causality has a way of just it's so hard to explain. It's so or wrap your mind around rather. Um the complexity of your environment and the way that that influences you towards where you're going to end up. It's really amazing to think about. Um, and so, yeah, that's what I've been thinking about like the past hour. And I decided, you know what, instead of doing what I always do, where I'm just going to sit at a table and stare blankly at a wall or a laptop screen and think about this, um, I'm going to try and develop a skill alongside it. And the cool thing about that is, now someone else can listen to insane ramblings. If you're down for that kind of thing, I know I am. Uh, but yeah, causality is insane. and it's also kind of scary when you realize how little control you have over it. Right. But yeah, I love Berserk. I'm using the word causality because, I guess you could use destiny, you could use fate, you could use, I don't know what you could use. But yeah, all right, that's it. That's all I gotta say. I'm not gonna try and run longer than I should just because I'm having fun. Okay, bye.